The wedding dress felt like a cage of silk and lace as Zelda Warren stood alone in the small church in Fort Sumner, New Mexico territory, watching the last of the guests filter out with pitying glances that burned worse than the desert sun outside. Her hands trembled as she clutched the wilting bouquet of wildflowers, tears streaming freely down her carefully painted face, blurring the vision of empty pews and an altar that would never see her vows spoken. Thomas Merrick, the man she had loved for 2 years, the man who had courted her properly and promised her the world, had simply vanished that morning of June 14, 1878, leaving behind nothing but a hastily scrawled note with her mother that read he could not go through with it. How could he do this? Zelda whispered to the empty church, her voice cracking under the weight of humiliation and heartbreak. The morning had started with such hope and excitement. She had woken before dawn, her heart racing with anticipation as her mother and sister helped her into the ivory gown that had taken months to sew. The dress had cost nearly everything her father had saved from his work at the general store, and now it seemed like the most wasteful expenditure imaginable. Every stitch mocked her, every carefully placed pearl button a reminder of dreams that would never come true. Her best friend Margaret had discovered Thomas's absence first, arriving at his boarding house to find his room cleared out and his landlord confused. The ceremony had been scheduled for 10 in the morning, and by 9:30, panic had set in. By 10:15, her father had read the note aloud to the gathered guests with a strained voice that barely concealed his fury and heartbreak for his daughter. The Reverend had offered kind words about God's mysterious plans, but they had fallen on deaf ears. Zelda had stood there in front of everyone, feeling her entire world crumble while trying to maintain some shred of dignity. Now, alone except for her mother who waited outside to give her privacy, Zelda sank onto the front pew and let the sobs come fully. Her shoulders shook with the force of her grief, and she buried her face in her hands, not caring that she was ruining the careful work her sister had done on her hair. What did it matter now? What did any of it matter? She was 20 years old, left at the altar in a small town where everyone knew everyone else's business. By nightfall, the story would have spread throughout Fort Sumner and probably to surrounding towns. She would be the object of gossip and pity for months, maybe years. I gave him everything, she sobbed to the empty air. 2 years of my life, my reputation, my heart. How could he just leave? The church door creaked open behind her, and she assumed it was her mother coming to collect her, but the footsteps were heavier, the gate different. Zelda looked up through tear-blurred eyes to see a tall man in dusty trail clothes standing in the doorway, his hat in his hands, silhouetted by the bright sunlight streaming in from outside. He was a stranger to her, with dark hair that touched his collar and a weathered face that spoke of years spent outdoors. His eyes, a striking shade of gray-blue, held genuine concern as he took in the sight of her in her wedding dress, alone and crying. "Pardon me, miss," he said, his voice deep and gentle with a slight Texas drawl. "I was passing through town and saw folks leaving the church looking troubled. Are you all right?" Zelda let out a bitter laugh that turned into another sob. "Do I look all right?" She gestured at her dress, at the empty church, at the sad remnants of what should have been her wedding day. "My husband left me at the altar. Or rather, he left before he could become my husband. He ran away this morning like a coward, leaving me here to face the entire town alone." The man stepped further into the church, his expression darkening with disapproval. "What kind of man does that to a woman?" "Apparently the kind I was fool enough to love," Zelda said bitterly. She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand, knowing she must look a disaster but beyond caring. "I am sorry, I should not be sharing my troubles with a stranger." You said you were passing through. I am, but I am in no hurry. He moved closer, his boots echoing on the wooden floor, and sat on the pew across the aisle from her, maintaining a respectful distance. Name is Ryder Lawson. I have been working cattle drives between Texas and Kansas, saving up money to buy my own ranch. Was planning to stop here for supplies before heading on, but that can wait. Zelda Warren, she replied automatically, then added with a hollow laugh. Formerly almost Zelda Merrick, now permanently Zelda Warren, the woman who was not good enough to marry. I doubt that is true, Ryder said firmly. His gaze was direct and honest, and something in his tone made her actually look at him properly. He was handsome in a rugged way, probably close to 25 or 26 years old, with strong features and a solid build that came from hard work. There were small scars on his hands and a fading mark on his jaw that suggested he had lived a difficult life. From where I am standing, any man who would leave you at the altar is a fool who does not deserve you. His loss is my blessing, getting to meet someone as beautiful as you. Zelda felt her cheeks flush despite her tears. You do not even know me. True enough, Ryder acknowledged with a slight smile. But I know a coward when I hear of one, and I know a brave woman when I see one. You are still here facing this, not running away. That takes courage. I do not feel very courageous, Zelda admitted. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I feel humiliated and heartbroken and so very foolish. Everyone tried to warn me about Thomas. My father said he had a restless spirit, that he talked big but never followed through on anything. My friend Sarah said she saw him with another woman last month, but I did not believe her. I thought she was just jealous or mistaken. I defended him, and now I look like the biggest fool in New Mexico territory. Ryder stood and crossed to her pew, sitting down beside her but leaving proper space between them. He pulled a clean handkerchief from his pocket and offered it to her. You are not a fool for loving someone and believing in them. That makes you trusting and kind, not foolish. The fault lies entirely with him. Zelda took the handkerchief gratefully and wiped her eyes. It smelled faintly of sage and leather, clean and masculine. You are very kind to say so, Mr. Lawson, but kindness does not change my situation. I will be the talk of this town for ages. And my poor father spent so much money on this wedding, money we can ill afford to lose. The dress, the food, the arrangements, all for nothing. Not for nothing, Ryder said quietly. It brought you to this moment sitting here, which brought me here to meet you. I do not believe in coincidences, Miss Warren. I believe things happen for reasons we cannot always see right away. Zelda looked at him skeptically through her tears. You believe it was somehow meant to be that I should be abandoned at my own wedding. I believe it was meant to be that you did not marry a man who would abandon you, Ryder corrected gently. Better to learn his true character now than after you were bound to him. And I believe it was meant to be that I should ride into Fort Sumner today instead of yesterday or tomorrow. I almost stopped in Santa Rosa instead, but something told me to push on. There was something oddly comforting about his certainty, even if Zelda could not quite share it. She dabbed at her eyes again with his handkerchief, trying to compose herself. What will I do now? I cannot stay in this church forever, but I cannot bear to face everyone out there. My mother is waiting, and there are probably dozens of people wanting to express their sympathy, which will only make me feel worse. Ryder was quiet for a moment, seeming to consider something. Then he said, What if you did not have to face them right away? What if you had a reason to hold your head high and walk out of here with dignity? What do you mean? Zelda asked, confused. Walk out with me, Ryder said simply. Let people see that you are not alone, that you are not broken by what happened. Let them see that while one man was fool enough to leave, another was smart enough to stay. It will not fix everything, but it might make leaving this church a little easier." Zelda stared at him in surprise. "You would do that for me? You do not even know me, and it might cause talk about you as well." "I am just passing through town," Ryder reminded her. "What do I care what folks here think of me? But you live here, and you deserve better than to walk out of your almost wedding looking defeated. So what do you say? Let me be a friend to you right now when you need one." The offer was so unexpected and kind that Zelda felt fresh tears spring to her eyes, but these were different than before. Someone, a complete stranger, was offering her kindness without wanting anything in return. It was more than Thomas had given her, more than many of the people she had known for years. She took a deep breath and nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Lawson. I accept your offer and I am grateful for it. Call me Ryder," he said with a warm smile that transformed his serious face. "Mr. Lawson makes me sound like a schoolteacher, and I barely got through third grade myself." Despite everything, Zelda felt a small smile tug at her lips. "Only if you call me Zelda." "Deal," Ryder agreed. He stood and offered her his arm. "Now, let us show Fort Sumner that you are not defeated. Hold your head up, Zelda. You have done nothing wrong, and you have nothing to be ashamed of." Zelda gathered her skirts and stood, her legs shaky beneath her. She took Ryder's offered arm, feeling the solid strength of him beside her. Together they walked down the aisle of the empty church, their footsteps echoing in the quiet space. When they reached the doors, Zelda paused, suddenly afraid again. Outside, she could hear voices, people lingering to gossip or express sympathy. The thought of facing them made her stomach churn. "I am here," Ryder said quietly, as if sensing her hesitation. "You are not alone." Those simple words gave Zelda the courage she needed. She nodded, and Ryder pushed open the church doors. Sunlight flooded over them as they stepped outside together, and Zelda saw her mother's surprised face in the small crowd that remained. There were maybe 20 people still gathered, including her parents, her sister Ruth, and several family friends. Their expressions ranged from sympathy to curiosity as they took in the sight of Zelda on the arm of a strange cowboy. "Zelda, dear," her mother said, rushing forward. Zelda Warren was a small woman with graying hair and worry lines around her eyes that had deepened considerably in the last few hours. "Are you all right? Who is this?" "I am fine, Mama," Zelda said, surprised to find she could keep her voice mostly steady. "This is Ryder Lawson. He was kind enough to sit with me for a while." "Mrs. Warren," Ryder said politely, tipping his hat. "I hope you do not mind the intrusion. I could not stand to see a lady in distress without offering what help I could." Zelda's father, George Warren, stepped forward. He was a tall man with thinning hair and the careful expression of someone who had learned to measure people quickly in his years running the general store. His eyes assessed Ryder carefully, taking in the worn but clean clothes, the well-maintained boots, and the respectful demeanor. "That is very kind of you, Mr. Lawson. My daughter has been through quite an ordeal today." "So I understand, sir," Ryder replied. "For what it is worth, I believe your daughter has shown remarkable strength and grace. She is a credit to you and your wife." George's expression softened slightly. "Thank you. Are you new to Fort Sumner?" "Just passing through on my way north," Ryder explained. "Though I might stay a few days if work is available. I am good with horses and cattle, and I can do general labor." "The McAllister Ranch north of town is always looking for hands," George offered. "I can give you directions if you are interested." "I appreciate that, sir." Ryder looked down at Zelda, his expression concerned. "Miss Warren, would you like me to escort you home? Or would you prefer to go with your family?" Zelda hesitated. Part of her wanted to cling to this stranger who had shown her such unexpected kindness. But she knew her parents needed to take her home, to comfort her and help her out of this ridiculous dress. "Thank you, Ryder, but I should go with my family. I truly appreciate everything you have done for me today. Your kindness meant more than you know." "It was my honor," Ryder said sincerely. He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a small card with an address on it. "I do not have a permanent residence, but letters can reach me at this address in Austin, Texas. My sister lives there and forwards my mail. If you ever need anything or just want to write, please do not hesitate." Zelda took the card, surprised by the gesture. "Thank you. I will remember that." Ryder tipped his hat to her family and the remaining onlookers, then walked toward his horse tied up near the church. Zelda watched him go, feeling strangely bereft. He mounted his horse with easy grace and rode off toward the main street of Fort Sumner, leaving Zelda standing in her wedding dress with her family gathered around her. "Well," her sister Ruth said, breaking the silence. She was 18 and pretty, with the same dark hair as Zelda but lighter eyes. "At least something interesting happened today. Who was that man? He was handsome." "Ruth," their mother scolded, "this is hardly the time." "It is all right, Mama," Zelda said tiredly. The adrenaline that had carried her out of the church was fading, leaving her exhausted and hollow. "Ruth is right. At least everyone will have something to talk about other than just my humiliation. They can wonder about the mysterious cowboy too." Her father put his arm around her shoulders. "Let us get you home, sweetheart. You need to get out of that dress and rest. Tomorrow things will look different." Zelda doubted that very much, but she allowed her parents to lead her to their wagon. Her mother had already collected the few decorations from the church, and someone had taken the food that was supposed to be for the wedding breakfast back to their house. As they drove through the streets of Fort Sumner, Zelda could feel eyes on them from every window and doorway. The humiliation she had temporarily forgotten came rushing back, and she hunched in the wagon seat, wishing she could disappear. Their house was a modest wood-frame structure on the edge of town, with a small porch and a vegetable garden that her mother tended carefully. Zelda had grown up in this house, and it had always felt like a haven. Now, as they pulled up in front, it just felt like a prison where she would have to face the ruins of her dreams. Inside, her mother helped her out of the wedding dress while Ruth made tea. The dress came off like a shed skin, and Zelda felt relieved to be free of it, even though removing it felt like admitting final defeat. She changed into a simple calico day dress and sat on her bed, staring at the wedding dress draped over the chair like a ghost. "I never want to see that dress again," Zelda said flatly. "Burn it, sell it, give it away, I do not care. I just do not want to look at it." "We will put it away for now," her mother said gently. "You do not have to make decisions like that today. Just rest, dear. You have been through more than anyone should have to bear." But Zelda could not rest. Her mind kept replaying the morning, searching for signs she should have seen, warnings she should have heeded. Thomas had seemed normal the last time she saw him, 3 days ago. They had discussed their plans for after the wedding, where they would live, how they would furnish their home. He had seemed excited, or at least she had thought so. Had it all been an act? Had he been planning his escape even then? The question that haunted her most was whether there was another woman. Had Thomas run off with someone else, or had he simply run away from responsibility? The not knowing was almost worse than the abandonment itself. Over the next few days, Zelda barely left her room. Well-meaning neighbors stopped by with food and sympathy, but she could not face them. Her mother turned most of them away with quiet thanks, understanding that Zelda needed time. Ruth tried to cheer her up with gossip and stories, but Zelda could not muster interest in anything. She felt numb, going through the motions of eating and sleeping but not really living. On the 4th day after the wedding that never was, her father came to her room with a serious expression. "Zelda, I need to speak with you about something." Zelda sat up from where she had been lying on her bed, staring at the ceiling. "What is it, Papa?" George sat down on the chair by her desk, looking uncomfortable. "I have been trying to track down Thomas, to get back at least some of the money we spent on the wedding. He owes us that much and more besides. I finally got word from someone who knew him from before he came to Fort Sumner." "What did you learn?" Zelda asked, though she was not sure she wanted to know. Her father's expression was grim. Thomas Merrick was not even his real name. "He is Thomas Aldrich, and he has done this before, in at least 2 other towns. He courts women, makes promises, gets money from their families for the wedding, and then disappears before the ceremony. He is a confidence man, Zelda. You were never the only one, and I doubt you will be the last." The words hit Zelda like physical blows. She had thought her heart could not break any further, but learning that everything had been a calculated deception opened new wounds. "He never loved me at all," she whispered. "It was all a lie, all of it. Every word, every promise, every kiss. He was just using me." "I am so sorry, sweetheart," her father said, his voice thick with emotion. "If I had known, if I had suspected anything like this, I would have protected you. I did ask around about him when he first started courting you, but he seemed legitimate. He had references, work history, everything seemed above board. He is very good at what he does." Zelda felt tears sliding down her cheeks again, though she had thought herself cried out. "Did you tell the sheriff?" "I did," her father confirmed. "He has sent telegrams to surrounding territories, but Thomas, or whatever his real name is likely long gone by now. Men like him know how to disappear. I am sorry, Zelda, but we will probably never see him again, or the money." "I do not care about the money," Zelda said, though she knew her father did. He had worked so hard to save it, and losing it was a significant blow to the family. "I just feel so stupid. How could I not see it? How could I be so blind?" "He was a professional liar," her father said firmly. "This is not your fault, Zelda, do you hear me? You did nothing wrong. He is the criminal, the liar, the thief. You were an innocent victim of his scheme." Intellectually, Zelda knew her father was right, but emotionally she could not help feeling responsible. She should have seen through Thomas. She should have listened to the warnings. She should have been smarter, more careful, less trusting. The knowledge that he had done this to other women before her did not comfort her. It only made her feel like a fool among fools. "What do I do now?" Zelda asked helplessly. "How do I move on from this? One day at a time," her father said. "And you do not have to do it alone. Your mother and I are here, Ruth is here, and you have friends who care about you even if you are avoiding them right now." Zelda nodded, but she felt hopeless. The scandal was the talk of the town, and she knew it would be for a long time. Her prospects for marriage were likely ruined. What man would want to court the woman who had been so publicly humiliated and deceived? She would probably end up a spinster, living with her parents for the rest of her life, always whispered about and pitied. That evening, her mother brought up a letter that had arrived in the afternoon post. "This came for you, dear. It is from Austin, Texas." Zelda took the letter curiously, recognizing the address from the card Ryder had given her. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it, unfolding the single sheet of paper to reveal neat, careful handwriting. "Dear Miss Warren, I hope this letter finds you well, or at least better than when we last met. I have been thinking about you often since leaving Fort Sumner, wondering how you are managing and hoping that you are finding your way through this difficult time. I know words from a stranger can only do so much, but I wanted you to know that someone is thinking of you kindly and wishing you well. I took your father's advice and went to the McAllister Ranch. They hired me on, and I have been working here for the past several days. It is good work, hard but honest, and the land here is beautiful in its own harsh way. The job is for at least a month, possibly longer if I want it, so I will be in the area for a while. I do not wish to impose on you or cause you any distress, but if you would like someone to talk to who is outside your immediate circle, I am available. Sometimes it is easier to speak to someone who is not intimately connected to the situation. If you would prefer not to write back, I understand completely. I only wanted to let you know that the offer of friendship stands if you want it. Please take care of yourself, Miss Warren. Remember that you are stronger than you know, and that what happened was not your fault. The man who left you was a fool, and his loss truly is a blessing for any other man who might have the honor of knowing you in the future. With respect and friendship, Ryder Lawson. Zelda read the letter 3 times, feeling oddly touched by the simple kindness of it. Ryder had no obligation to her, no reason to think of her or write to her, yet he had done so anyway. In a time when everyone around her either pitied her or gossiped about her, here was someone who simply offered friendship without judgment. She sat at her desk and pulled out paper and ink, deciding to write back. What did she have to lose? At worst, it would give her something to do besides wallow in her misery. At best, perhaps she would make a genuine friend. Dear Mr. Lawson, thank you for your letter. It arrived at a time when I very much needed kindness from an unexpected source. The past few days have been difficult, even more so than the day you met me. I have learned that the man I thought I loved was not who he claimed to be at all. He is a confidence man who has deceived other women in other towns, always vanishing before the wedding with whatever money he managed to extract from them and their families. Everything he told me was a lie. Every moment we shared was false. I thought my heart was broken before, but learning this has shattered it all over again. I apologize for burdening you with my troubles. You asked how I am doing, and I suppose the honest answer is not well. I feel foolish and used and humiliated. I cannot face most of the people in town, and I fear my reputation may never recover. But I am trying to find my way forward, as you suggested, one day at a time. I would very much appreciate having someone to write to who is outside all of this. You are right that sometimes it is easier to speak to someone not directly involved. I accept your offer of friendship gratefully, if the offer still stands after this rather pathetic letter. How is the work at the McAllister Ranch? I have known the McAllisters for years. Mr. McAllister is fair but demanding, and his wife makes the best apple pie in the territory. If you have not had the chance to try it yet, you should. It is one of the few things about Fort Sumner worth celebrating. Thank you again for writing and for thinking of me. Your kindness that day at the church and again in your letter has meant more to me than I can properly express. With gratitude, Zelda Warren. She posted the letter the next day, sending Ruth to do it so she would not have to face anyone at the post office. Then she waited, surprised by how much she was anticipating a response. Ryder's letter had given her something to focus on besides her misery, and she found herself thinking about him often. She remembered the kindness in his eyes, the steadiness of his presence, the way he had offered help without asking for anything in return. A week later, another letter arrived. This one was longer, filled with details about his work on the ranch and stories about some of the other ranch hands. He described the landscape around Fort Sumner, the way the light looked at sunset over the plains, the sound of cattle lowing at night. He wrote about his dreams of having his own ranch someday, a place he could build with his own hands and make into something lasting. He asked questions about her life, her interests, what she liked to do when she was not dealing with heartbreak. Zelda wrote back, finding herself opening up about things she had not talked about in years. She told him about her love of reading, how she devoured every book she could get her hands on despite the limited selection at the Fort Sumner General Store. She wrote about her dreams of traveling, of seeing places beyond the small town she had lived in all her life. She confessed her fear that she would never escape Fort Sumner now, that she would be trapped here by scandal and circumstance. The letters went back and forth regularly over the next several weeks. Through their correspondence, Zelda began to feel like herself again. She started leaving her room more often, helping her mother with household tasks and even venturing into town occasionally. People still stared and whispered, but their judgment bothered her less. She had a secret source of happiness in Ryder's letters, something that was entirely hers and unsullied by scandal or pity. She learned that Ryder had grown up in Texas, the youngest of 4 children. His parents had died when he was 16, his father from consumption and his mother from grief shortly after. His older siblings had scattered, and he had been working cattle drives and ranch jobs ever since, saving every penny toward his dream of owning land. He was 24 years old, self-educated through borrowed books and newspapers, and surprisingly well-read for someone who had barely attended school. Ryder learned that Zelda was an avid gardener who grew herbs and flowers in addition to vegetables. She had helped her father at the general store since she was young and had a good head for numbers. She loved music, but had never learned to play an instrument. She was curious about everything and frustrated by the limited opportunities available to women in her time and place. After 2 months of correspondence, Ryder wrote asking if he could call on her properly. Zelda's heart raced as she read his careful words expressing his growing affection for her and his desire to know her better in person, not just through letters. "I understand if you think it is too soon," he wrote. "I understand if you are not ready for anything beyond friendship, but I cannot continue writing to you without being honest about my feelings. You have become important to me, Zelda. Your letters are the bright spot in my days, and thoughts of you fill my evenings. If there is any chance you might feel the same, I would like the opportunity to court you properly, openly, the way you deserve to be courted." Zelda sat with the letter for a long time, her emotions in turmoil. Part of her was terrified. How could she trust another man after Thomas's betrayal? How could she risk her heart again? But another part of her, the part that had been slowly healing through these months of correspondence, whispered that Ryder was different. He had already proven himself to be honest and kind. He had asked for nothing but friendship, and only now, after months of patient communication, had he expressed deeper feelings. She discussed it with her mother, who had been reading the letters with her permission. Ryder Warren had grown fond of Ryder through his words, appreciating his intelligence and sincerity. "He seems like a good man, Zelda," she said carefully, "but the choice is yours and no one would blame you for being cautious." "I am cautious," Zelda admitted. "I am terrified, actually. But I also think I might be developing feelings for him too, and I do not want to let fear stop me from exploring something that might be genuine." "Then write back and tell him yes," her mother encouraged. "Take it slowly, carefully, but give yourself permission to try again." Zelda wrote back that same evening, her hand shaking slightly as she penned her response. "Dear Ryder, your letter surprised me, though perhaps it should not have. I have felt our friendship deepening through these months of correspondence, and I would be lying if I said I had not hoped for something more, even while being afraid to admit it. Yes, you may call on me. I would like to see you again, to spend time with you in person and see if what we have found through letters translates to real life. I must be honest with you as well, though. I am scared. I trusted before and was betrayed completely. The thought of opening my heart again terrifies me. I need time, patience, and honesty. If you can give me those things, then I am willing to try. Please come to dinner on Sunday if you are free. My parents would like to meet you properly, and it would give us a chance to talk face to face." I find I am both nervous and excited at the prospect of seeing you again. Yours, Zelda. Sunday arrived with Zelda in a state of nervous anticipation. She changed her dress 3 times, finally settling on a blue calico that brought out her eyes. Her mother made a special dinner of roast chicken and vegetables, with fresh bread and apple pie for dessert. Her father was cautiously optimistic, wanting to believe that this young man might be genuine but protective of his daughter after what had happened. When Ryder arrived promptly at noon, Zelda opened the door to find him cleaned up and dressed in his best clothes, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. He looked nervous too, which somehow comforted her. "Hello, Zelda," he said, his voice warm. "You look beautiful." "Thank you," Zelda replied, feeling her cheeks warm. "Please come in. My parents are eager to meet you." Dinner was initially awkward but gradually became more comfortable as Ryder's genuine nature came through. He answered George Warren's pointed questions about his background and intentions honestly and respectfully. He complimented Alina's cooking sincerely and engaged Ruth in conversation about her interests. He was polite, well-mannered, and earnest in a way that gradually won over the Warren family. After dinner, Zelda and Ryder sat on the front porch while her parents discreetly remained inside. The evening was pleasant, with a slight breeze that provided relief from the day's heat. They sat on the porch swing, not touching but close enough that Zelda could feel the warmth of him beside her. "Your letters did not fully prepare me for seeing you again," Ryder said quietly. "You are even more lovely than I remembered." Zelda smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. "I appreciate the compliment, but I think we both know I come with considerable baggage. You would have an easier time courting almost any other woman in the territory." "I do not want any other woman," Ryder said firmly. "I want you, Zelda, baggage and all. We all have pasts and pain. Mine may not be as publicly displayed as yours, but I have my own scars. What matters to me is who you are now, the woman I have come to know through your letters. That woman is intelligent, funny, kind, and stronger than she gives herself credit for." "I do not feel very strong," Zelda admitted. "I still have nightmares sometimes about the wedding. I wake up thinking Thomas is still here, still planning to marry me, and then I remember it was all lies. Some days I still cannot quite believe it happened." Ryder reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, and gently took her hand. His palm was calloused from hard work, but his touch was gentle. "I cannot change what happened to you, and I cannot promise that I will never hurt you because people are flawed and mistakes happen. But I can promise that I will never lie to you, never deceive you, and never make promises I do not intend to keep. I can promise that my interest in you is genuine and that I will always treat you with respect." Zelda looked at their joined hands, then up at his face. His gray-blue eyes were earnest and open, without guile or deception. She wanted desperately to believe him, but trust was a fragile thing once broken. "I want to believe you," she said honestly, "but I am afraid. What if I am making another mistake? What if I am a terrible judge of character and I am walking into another disaster?" "Then we will take it slowly," Ryder said reasonably. "We will continue as we have been, getting to know each other, but now in person as well as through letters. There is no rush, Zelda. I am not going anywhere, and I will wait as long as you need to feel comfortable trusting me." They talked until the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Ryder shared more stories about his life, his siblings, his travels. Zelda opened up about her childhood, her dreams and disappointments, her struggles with what her future might look like now. When Ryder finally left to return to the ranch, Zelda felt something she had not felt in months: hope. Over the following weeks, Ryder called on her regularly. They went on carefully chaperoned outings, walks through town, Picnics in the countryside with Ruth tagging along as chaperone. Slowly, carefully, Zelda felt herself falling for him. It was different from what she had felt for Thomas. That had been passionate and exciting but ultimately shallow. Her feelings for Ryder grew from a foundation of genuine friendship and deep respect. She admired his work ethic, his honesty, his patience with her fears and hesitations. 3 months into their courtship, they were sitting by the creek that ran south of town, Ruth dozing a discreet distance away in the shade. Ryder had been teaching Zelda to skip stones across the water, and they were laughing at her failed attempts when he suddenly grew serious. "Zelda, I need to tell you something," he said, his expression troubled. Immediately, Zelda's defenses went up. Those words, that tone, they reminded her too much of discovering Thomas's deception. "What is it?" she asked, her voice tight. Ryder must have noticed her reaction because he quickly took her hand. "Nothing bad, I promise. At least, I hope you will not think it is bad. I have been offered a position as foreman on a ranch in Colorado. It is a good opportunity, better pay and more responsibility, and it comes with a small house. The owner wants me to start in 2 months. Zelda's heart sank. Of course something would come along to ruin this, to take him away from her. She should have known better than to let herself care. "I see," she said, trying to keep her voice neutral even as she felt tears prick at her eyes. "That sounds like a wonderful opportunity for you." "It is," Ryder agreed, "but it means leaving Fort Sumner, and I do not want to leave you, Zelda. These past months with you have been the happiest of my life. So I am asking you something, and you can take time to think about it before you answer. I will not be upset either way, I promise." "Asking me what?" Zelda whispered, afraid to hope. Ryder shifted so he was facing her fully, still holding her hand. "Come with me. As my wife. Marry me, Zelda. I know it has not been long, and I know you have every reason to be cautious, but I love you. I love your intelligence and your kindness and your strength. I love the way you laugh at my terrible jokes and the way you see the good in people even after being hurt so badly. I want to build a life with you, a real life based on honesty and partnership. I am not asking for an answer right now. Take time, think about it, talk to your parents. But know that my offer is sincere and that I mean every word." Zelda stared at him, tears now streaming freely down her face. Part of her wanted to say yes immediately, to throw caution to the wind and trust in the love she felt growing between them. But another part, the part still wounded from Thomas's betrayal, held back in fear. "I need time," she whispered. "Not because I do not care for you, but because I am terrified of making another mistake." "I understand," Ryder said gently. He reached up and carefully wiped away her tears with his thumb. "Take all the time you need. I have 2 months before I need to give the ranch in Colorado a final answer. I will wait." Zelda spent the next several days in an agony of indecision. She loved Ryder, she was certain of that now. But was love enough? How could she trust her judgment after being so completely deceived before? She talked to her mother, who gently reminded her that Ryder had proven himself through actions, not just words. She talked to her father, who admitted that he had investigated Ryder thoroughly and found him to be exactly who he claimed to be, a hard-working cowboy with a good reputation among everyone who had employed him. "But the choice is yours, sweetheart," her father said. "I cannot tell you that there is no risk because there is always risk in loving someone. I can only tell you that I believe Ryder is a good man who genuinely loves you. Whether that is enough to risk your heart again is something only you can decide." A week after Ryder's proposal, Zelda asked him to take her riding out to an overlook north of town, just the two of them. It was slightly scandalous to go without a chaperone, but Zelda was beyond caring what people thought. She needed to have this conversation privately. They sat on a large rock overlooking the valley, their horses grazing nearby. Zelda had been quiet during the ride, gathering her courage. Now, looking out at the vast landscape before them, she finally spoke. "I am going to say yes," she said quietly. "I am going to marry you and go with you to Colorado. But I need you to understand what you are taking on. I am damaged, Ryder. I have trust issues and fears and scars that may never fully heal. There will be times when I am unreasonably suspicious or afraid. There will be moments when I pull away because some small thing reminds me of before. Are you truly prepared for that?" Ryder took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "I am prepared for all of that and more. I am not expecting perfection, Zelda. I am expecting a real marriage with real challenges. But I believe we can face those challenges together. And maybe, over time, I can help you heal. Not by trying to fix you, because you are not broken, but by being consistent and honest and showing you through actions that you can trust me." Zelda turned to face him, searching his eyes for any sign of doubt or deception. She found only sincerity and love. "Then yes, Ryder Lawson, I will marry you." Ryder's face broke into the biggest smile she had ever seen on him. He pulled her close and kissed her gently, sweetly, without the demanding passion Thomas had shown, but with something deeper and more meaningful. When they pulled apart, Zelda was crying again, but this time they were tears of joy mixed with relief. "We will do this right," Ryder promised. "A proper wedding, whatever kind you want. I know the last one holds bad memories, but I want you to have the wedding day you deserve." Zelda shook her head. "I do not want anything big or elaborate, just something simple with our families, maybe at the church, but small and quiet." "I do not need a spectacle, Ryder. I just need you." They set the date for 6 weeks later, giving them time to make arrangements, but not so long that Ryder would miss the start date for his new position in Colorado. This time, there was no elaborate dress or extensive guest list. Zelda wore a simple but pretty dress her mother made from rose-colored fabric. The ceremony was attended only by immediate family and a few close friends. But unlike the first time, the groom was actually there, standing at the altar with tears in his eyes as Zelda walked down the aisle on her father's arm. The reverend kept the ceremony short and sweet. When he pronounced them husband and wife, Ryder kissed Zelda with gentle reverence, and she felt something inside her finally begin to fully heal. This was real. This was genuine. This was what love was supposed to feel like. The small reception afterward was held at the Warren home, with food and laughter and genuine happiness. George Warren toasted the couple, his voice thick with emotion as he welcomed Ryder into the family and wished his daughter every happiness. Eleanor cried happy tears and hugged Zelda tightly, whispering that she was so proud of her for being brave enough to try again. That night, in the small boarding house room Ryder had rented for them, Zelda stood nervously as her new husband carefully removed the pins from her hair. His movements were gentle and unhurried, giving her time to adjust to the intimacy of the moment. "Are you all right?" he asked softly, his hand stilling in her hair. "We do not have to do anything you are not ready for, Zelda. I can sleep on the floor if you would be more comfortable." Zelda turned to face him, touched by his consideration. "I want to be your wife in every way," she said, her voice only trembling slightly. "I am just nervous. Thomas and I never, well, he claimed he was respecting my virtue by waiting until marriage, but I suppose that was just another lie to keep up appearances." "I am glad you waited," Ryder said, cupping her face in his hands. "I am glad I get to be your first, that we get to learn this together. But we will go slowly, and you can tell me to stop at any time. I will never be angry or disappointed. Your comfort is more important than anything else." What followed was tender and gentle, occasionally awkward as most first times are, but filled with care and genuine affection. Ryder kept his word, checking in with her frequently, making sure she was comfortable and happy. By the time they finally fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, Zelda felt another piece of her broken heart mend. She had been right to trust him. She had been right to take the risk. The next few days were spent preparing for the move to Colorado. Zelda said goodbye to her family and the few friends she had maintained through the scandal. Her mother cried copiously and made Zelda promise to write often. Her father hugged her tightly and slipped Ryder an envelope with some money, insisting he take it to help them get started despite Ryder's protests. Ruth made Zelda promise to visit and to tell her all about Colorado in her letters. The journey to Colorado took 2 weeks by wagon. They traveled with 2 other families who were also heading north, which provided both security and companionship. Along the way, Zelda and Ryder continued getting to know each other, their bond deepening with each passing day. They talked about everything and nothing, sharing dreams and fears and hopes for the future. They played word games to pass the time and told each other stories from their childhoods. At night, they slept under the stars or in their wagon, Zelda feeling safer than she ever had wrapped in Ryder's strong arms. The ranch in Colorado was located in the valley near a small town called Cedar Springs. It was beautiful, with mountains rising in the distance and fertile grazing land stretching for miles. The main ranch house was impressive, and the foreman's cottage that came with Ryder's position was small but cozy, with 2 rooms, a fireplace, and a front porch that looked out over the valley. "It is perfect," Zelda breathed when she first saw it. "Ryder, it is absolutely perfect." The ranch owner, Mr. Samuel Henderson, was a gruff but fair man in his 50s who had built his ranch from nothing. His wife Margaret was kind and welcoming, immediately taking Zelda under her wing and helping her settle in. There were several other families who lived and worked on the ranch, creating a ready-made community that Zelda quickly became part of. Ryder threw himself into his new role with characteristic dedication. As foreman, he was responsible for managing the ranch hands, organizing the work, and ensuring everything ran smoothly. It was demanding work that often had him up before dawn and working until after sunset, but he loved it. This was exactly the kind of position he had been working toward, the kind of experience he needed to eventually run his own ranch. Zelda made their little cottage into a home. She sewed curtains for the windows and planted a small garden beside the house. She took in sewing and mending for some of the other families to earn extra money, and quickly became known for her skill with a needle. She also helped Margaret Henderson with the account books, her head for numbers proving useful in tracking ranch expenses and profits. Their first year of marriage was not without challenges. There were times when Zelda's old fears resurfaced, when something would trigger memories of Thomas, and she would find herself doubting or questioning. True to his word, Ryder remained patient during these episodes, talking her through her fears and reassuring her of his love without ever becoming frustrated or angry. Slowly, gradually, those episodes became less frequent and less intense. They also faced the normal adjustments of any newly married couple learning to live together. They had small disagreements about household matters, different preferences for how things should be done, moments of tension when they were tired or stressed. But they learned to communicate, to compromise, to apologize when they were wrong and forgive when they were hurt. Their love deepened not despite these challenges, but because of how they chose to face them together. In the spring of their second year of marriage, Zelda realized her monthly courses were late. At first she did not want to hope, afraid of being disappointed, but as days turned into weeks and her body began to show other signs, She allowed herself to believe it might be true. She waited until she was certain before telling Ryder, afraid of his reaction even though she knew he wanted children. She planned a special dinner, making his favorite foods and setting their small table with extra care. When Ryder came home that evening, tired and dusty from a long day of fence repair, he immediately noticed something was different. "What is all this?" he asked, looking around at the carefully prepared meal. "Did I forget an anniversary or something?" "No," Zelda said, suddenly nervous. "I just wanted to make tonight special because I have something to tell you." Ryder's expression became concerned. "Is everything all right? You are not sick, are you?" "No, I am not sick," Zelda assured him. She took a deep breath and reached for his hand. "Ryder, I am pregnant. We are going to have a baby." For a moment, Ryder just stared at her, seemingly unable to process the information. Then his face broke into the biggest smile she had seen since their wedding day. He let out a whoop of joy and picked her up, spinning her around before carefully setting her back down as if suddenly afraid he might hurt her. "We are having a baby," he repeated, his voice filled with awe. "Zelda, this is incredible. I am so happy I could burst. Are you happy? Is this what you want?" "Yes," Zelda said, tears streaming down her face. "I am happy and terrified and excited all at once. I was so afraid you might not be ready or might think it was too soon." "Too soon," Ryder laughed, pulling her into his arms. "Zelda, I would have been happy if you told me this on our wedding night. I want a whole house full of children with you if we are blessed with them. This is wonderful news." The pregnancy was not easy. Zelda suffered from terrible morning sickness for the first few months, barely able to keep anything down. Margaret Henderson, who had raised 4 children of her own, helped Zelda through it with remedies and advice. As her belly grew, Zelda found the physical demands challenging, but Ryder was attentive and helpful, taking over the heavier household tasks and making sure she rested as much as possible. In late November of 1880, after a long and difficult labor, Zelda gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him James George Lawson, after Ryder's father and Zelda's. The moment Zelda held her son for the first time, she felt overwhelmed with love so fierce it almost frightened her. This tiny person was depending on her completely, and she was determined to be the best mother she could be. Ryder was smitten from the first moment he saw his son. He held the baby with careful reverence, tears streaming down his face as he marveled at the tiny fingers and toes. "He is perfect," Ryder whispered. "Zelda, you did such an amazing job. He is absolutely perfect." Those first months of parenthood were exhausting but joyful. James was a fussy baby who did not sleep well, and both Zelda and Ryder spent many nights walking the floor with him. But even in their exhaustion, they found joy in their small family. Watching Ryder with their son, seeing the gentle way he held James and talked to him, Zelda fell even more deeply in love with her husband. When James was 6 months old, Ryder came home one evening with news. "Samuel wants to retire," he told Zelda. "He is getting older and his health is not what it used to be. He wants to sell the ranch and he has offered me first opportunity to buy it." Zelda's eyes widened. "The whole ranch? Ryder, that must cost a fortune. How could we possibly afford it?" "We could not afford the whole thing," Ryder admitted. "But Samuel and I have been talking. He would be willing to sell us a portion of the ranch, about 2,000 acres including our cottage and some of the best grazing land. It would be enough to run a good-sized herd and make a real living. The price he is offering is fair, incredibly fair actually. I think he wants to see the ranch go to someone who will care for it properly. With what I have saved, plus what we could borrow from the bank, we could do it, Zelda. We could own our own land." Zelda looked at her husband's excited, hopeful face, then down at their son sleeping peacefully in his cradle. Ryder had been working toward this dream since before she met him. It was the reason he had been on the road that day in Fort Sumner, saving money from cattle drives and ranch work. Now the dream was within reach. "Then we should do it," she said firmly. "This is what you have been working for all these years." "What we have been working for," Ryder corrected, pulling her close. "None of this would mean anything without you and James. You are my real dream, Zelda. The ranch is just where we will build our life together." The next several months were busy with negotiations and arrangements. They worked with a lawyer to draw up the papers and with the bank to secure a loan for the portion they needed to borrow. In the spring of 1881, the papers were signed and filed. Ryder and Zelda Lawson officially owned 2,000 acres of Colorado ranchland. Owning the ranch meant even more work than before. Ryder was now responsible for everything, not just as a foreman but as the owner. They hired a few ranch hands to help with the work, and Zelda took over managing the household accounts and business records. It was challenging, sometimes overwhelming, but it was theirs. They were building something lasting, something they could pass on to James and whatever other children they might have. Over the next several years, their ranch grew and prospered. Ryder had a talent for managing cattle and for reading the land, knowing when to move herds and how to maximize the grazing. Zelda proved to have a sharp business mind, negotiating good prices for their cattle and managing their finances carefully. They reinvested profits into improving the ranch, buying more cattle, building better fences and structures. When James was 3, Zelda discovered she was pregnant again. This time she was less afraid and more excited, eager to give James a sibling. The pregnancy was easier than the first, and in May of 1884 she gave birth to a healthy baby girl they named Rose Alina, after Ryder's mother and Zelda's. Rose was a calmer baby than James had been, and having been through it once before, Zelda and Ryder felt more confident as parents. 2 years later, another daughter arrived, Catherine Margaret, named for Ryder's maternal grandmother and Margaret Henderson, who had become like a second mother to Zelda. The ranch house, which they had gradually expanded over the years, rang with the sounds of children laughing and playing. Zelda had a herb and flower garden that was the envy of the county, and she had become known for her healing remedies as well as her sewing skills. Sometimes, particularly on quiet evenings when Ryder sat on their porch with his arm around her while they watched their children play in the yard, Zelda would think back to that terrible day in Fort Sumner. The day that had seemed like the end of her world had actually been the beginning of her real life. If Thomas had not left her at the altar, she would never have met Ryder. She would never have found this deep, abiding love that had only grown stronger with time and challenge. "What are you thinking about?" Ryder would ask on those occasions, always attuned to her moods. "Just how grateful I am," Zelda would reply honestly. "For you, for our children, for this life we have built. I know it sounds strange, but I am grateful Thomas left me. As much as it hurt at the time, it led me to you, and I would not change that for anything. His loss truly was my blessing," Ryder would say, echoing the words from that first day in the church. "I think about that sometimes, how close I came to never meeting you. If I had stopped in Santa Rosa like I almost did, if I had not happened to ride through Fort Sumner on that exact day, we might never have found each other. I think we would have found each other somehow," Zelda would say, leaning her head on his shoulder. "I think some things are meant to be." As the years passed, their ranch continued to grow and prosper. James grew into a serious, hard-working boy who idolized his father and wanted to learn everything about running the ranch. Rose was gentle and kind with a gift for animals, able to calm even the most skittish horse or cow. Catherine was the adventurous one, always climbing trees and exploring, keeping her parents on their toes. In 1890, when James was 10, Rose 7, and Catherine 5, Zelda discovered she was pregnant again. At 32 years old, she found this pregnancy more tiring than the others, but she was still happy about it. This time she was secretly hoping for another boy, wanting James to have a brother. Her wish was granted when she gave birth to twin boys in February of 1891. Samuel Thomas and Henry William, named after Mr. Henderson, who had passed away the year before and Ryder's older brother. The twins were a handful, demanding and loud, but they brought new energy and joy to the household. James was thrilled to have brothers, even if he had to wait until they were older to really play with them. The ranch house had to be expanded again to accommodate the growing family. Ryder and some of the ranch hands built a whole new wing with additional bedrooms. Zelda hired help for the first time, a young woman from town named Anna who came 3 days a week to help with the washing and cleaning. With 5 children and a ranch to run, Zelda finally admitted she could not do everything herself. Letters flowed regularly between Colorado and Fort Sumner. Zelda's parents visited twice, making the long journey to see their grandchildren. Ruth had married a banker and still lived in New Mexico, and she visited once with her own 2 children. The sisters spent hours talking and laughing, marveling at how their lives had turned out. "I never thought I would be this happy," Zelda confessed to Ruth during one visit. They were sitting on the porch watching all the cousins play together. "After what happened with Thomas, I thought my life was over. I thought I would end up alone and bitter. Instead, I have everything I could ever want." "You deserve it," Ruth said firmly. "After what you went through, you deserve every bit of happiness. And Ryder is wonderful, Zelda. I can see how much he loves you and the children. You made the right choice taking that risk." By the late 1890s, Ryder and Zelda Lawson were well-established and respected members of the Cedar Springs community. Their ranch was one of the most successful in the area, known for quality cattle and fair dealings. Ryder had become a leader in the local Ranchers Association, and Zelda was active in the church and the school board. Their children were growing up strong and healthy, learning the value of hard work and family. On their 15th wedding anniversary in 1893, Ryder took Zelda back to the place where he had proposed, the overlook they had ridden to all those years ago. The children were left with Anna and one of the ranch hands for the day, giving Ryder and Zelda rare time alone together. They sat on the same large rock, looking out over the valley that had become their home. Zelda was 35 now, with a few gray hairs beginning to show and lines at the corners of her eyes from years of smiling and squinting in the sun. Ryder was 39, his dark hair also touched with silver, his face more weathered but still handsome to her eyes. 15 years, Ryder mused, his arm around her shoulders. "Some days it feels like yesterday, and some days it feels like you have always been part of my life." "I know what you mean," Zelda agreed. "I can barely remember what life was like before you, before this." She gestured at the valley, at their ranch visible in the distance, at everything they had built together. "You ever regret it?" Ryder asked quietly. "Taking the risk, marrying me so quickly, leaving everything familiar behind?" "Never," Zelda said without hesitation. "Not for a single moment. You have given me everything I could ever want, Ryder. Love, children, security, partnership. You kept every promise you made to me that day on the porch in Fort Sumner. You never lied, never deceived me, never made me doubt your love. You have shown me what real love looks like, and I am so grateful." "I am the grateful one," Ryder said, pulling her closer and kissing the top of her head. "You took a chance on a wandering cowboy with nothing but dreams and determination. You believed in me when you had every reason not to believe in anyone. You have made me happier than I ever thought possible." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, enjoying the peace and the view. Finally, Ryder spoke again. "I have been thinking about the future," he said. "James is almost 13 now. In a few years, he will be ready to take on more responsibility on the ranch. I am thinking we might expand again, maybe buy some of the adjacent land that is coming up for sale. Build something even bigger for our children and eventually our grandchildren." Zelda smiled at the thought of grandchildren, still years away but inevitable given their large family. "That sounds wonderful. I trust your judgment on these things. You have never steered us wrong yet." "We are a team," Ryder reminded her. "I may make the decisions about the cattle and the land, but you make sure we can afford it and that we are investing wisely. This ranch would not be what it is without your contribution." As the sun began to set, they rode back to the ranch, to their home and their children. That evening, the whole family gathered for a special dinner to celebrate their parents' anniversary. The children, even the rambunctious twins who were now 8 years old, were on their best behavior. James, now a gangly teenager, made a toast with his glass of milk, thanking his parents for being such good examples of what love and marriage should look like. Later, after the children were in bed, Ryder and Zelda sat by the fireplace in their bedroom. It was a cold night, and the fire provided welcome warmth. Zelda was mending one of the boys' shirts while Ryder reviewed ledgers, a typical quiet evening for them. But there was contentment in the routine, comfort in the familiar. "I love you, Zelda," Ryder said suddenly, looking up from his papers. "I do not say it enough, but I want you to know, you are still the best thing that ever happened to me." "I love you too," Zelda replied, setting down her mending to meet his eyes. "More than I can properly express." "You saved me, Ryder, in every way a person can be saved. You gave me back my faith in love and in myself. I will never stop being grateful for the day you walked into that church." Ryder came over and knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. "We saved each other," he said firmly. "I was just drifting before I met you, working toward a goal but without real purpose. You gave me something to work for beyond just myself. You gave me a reason, a family, a home in every sense of the word." They held each other close, two people who had found each other at the right moment, who had chosen to trust and risk and build something lasting together. Outside, the wind howled across the prairie, but inside they were warm and safe, surrounded by the life they had created. The years continued to pass, bringing the joys and challenges that come with running a ranch and raising a large family. James grew into a fine young man who took over more and more of the ranch operations as Ryder began, very gradually, to slow down. Rose surprised everyone by showing a talent for teaching and began helping at the local school. Catherine remained adventurous and eventually shocked the family by announcing she wanted to be a doctor, an unusual ambition for a woman but one her parents supported. The twins, Samuel and Henry, were inseparable, and both showed the same love for ranch work as their father and older brother. By 1905, when Ryder and Zelda celebrated their 27th anniversary, they were grandparents twice over. James had married a local girl named Elizabeth, and they had 2 young sons. The ranch had expanded to over 5,000 acres and employed a dozen ranch hands. The original small cottage had been completely replaced by a large, comfortable ranch house that was the center of a thriving operation. Zelda was 47 now, her hair more gray than dark, her face lined with the marks of a life well lived. Ryder was 51, his movements slower than they once were, his back sometimes bothering him from years of hard work. But they were healthy and happy, surrounded by family and friends, secure in the knowledge that they had built something lasting. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset as they had done thousands of times over the years, Zelda thought again about that day in Fort Sumner. It felt like a lifetime ago, like something that had happened to someone else. The frightened, heartbroken girl she had been seemed almost a stranger to the confident, content woman she had become. "You remember what you said to me that first day?" Zelda asked Ryder. "In the church when I was crying over Thomas." "I said several things," Ryder replied with a smile. "Which one do you mean?" "You said his loss was your blessing," Zelda reminded him. "You said it again later, and you have said it many times over the years. But do you still feel that way?" "After all the hard times, the struggles, the challenges we have faced." Ryder took her hand, his grip still strong despite the years. "More than ever," he said firmly. "Every challenge we faced together, and it made us stronger. Every hard time was worth it because we came through it as a team. His loss was absolutely my blessing, Zelda, and I would not change a single thing about our life together." "Would you?" "Not one thing," Zelda agreed. "Even the hard parts, even the struggles, they all led us here. To this moment, this life, this family. I am exactly where I am supposed to be." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. Around them, their ranch was settling in for the night. In the distance, they could hear the cattle lowing and one of the ranch hands calling out to another. From inside the house came the sounds of their grandchildren playing while their daughter Catherine studied her medical texts and Rose prepared the evening meal. James and Ryder had spent the day together working with a particularly troublesome horse, and both had returned exhausted but satisfied. This was the life Zelda had never imagined that terrible day when Thomas left her at the altar. This fullness, this joy, this deep and abiding love had been beyond her comprehension then. She had thought her life was ending when in reality it had been just beginning. The woman who had wept in an empty church, abandoned and heartbroken, had become a woman surrounded by love and family, secure in herself and her choices. "Thank you," Zelda said quietly to Ryder, "for everything. For seeing me that day, for offering friendship, for being patient with my fears, for loving me so completely, for giving me this beautiful life." "Thank you," Ryder countered, "for taking a chance on me, for believing in our dream, for being my partner in every way, for giving me a family and a home and a purpose beyond myself. You are my heart, Zelda. You always have been and you always will be." As darkness fell and the stars began to appear in the vast Colorado sky, Ryder and Zelda went inside to join their family. The house was full of warmth and laughter, of love and belonging. 3 generations gathered around the large dining table, sharing a meal and stories, and the comfortable companionship of people who truly knew and loved each other. Zelda looked around at her family, at her husband and children and grandchildren, and felt her heart swell with gratitude and joy. The journey from that devastating day in Fort Sumner to this moment had not always been easy, but it had been worth every struggle and every tear. She had learned that sometimes the worst moments of our lives are actually doorways to the best parts, that endings can become beginnings if we are brave enough to walk through them. The cowboy who had wandered into a church and offered comfort to a weeping bride had become the love of her life, her partner, her best friend. Together they had built something lasting and beautiful, a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. Their children would carry on the ranch and the values they had instilled. Their grandchildren would tell stories about them to future generations. As Zelda helped her daughter clear the dinner dishes while the men talked about ranch business and the children played, she caught Ryder's eye across the room. He smiled at her, that same warm smile that had first begun to heal her broken heart all those years ago. She smiled back, a look passing between them that needed no words, a communication built on years of love and trust and partnership. That night, as they prepared for bed in the room they had shared for over a quarter century, Ryder pulled Zelda into his arms. "Happy?" he asked, a question he had asked countless times over the years. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Zelda replied, the same answer she always gave because it was always true. She rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, the sound that had become more precious to her than any music. They fell asleep that way, wrapped in each other's arms, secure in their love and their life together. Outside, the Colorado wind whispered through the prairie grass and the stars wheeled slowly overhead. The ranch slept, the cattle were safe, the children were protected, and all was well. The years ahead would bring more changes and challenges. James would eventually take over full management of the ranch as Ryder's age caught up with him. Rose would marry a teacher and start her own family. Catherine would indeed become a doctor, one of the first women doctors in Colorado, making her parents incredibly proud. The twins would start their own ranch on land adjacent to the family property, expanding the Lawson holdings even further. There would be more grandchildren, eventually great-grandchildren. There would be hard years when weather or markets tested them, good years when everything seemed to go right. There would be losses and sorrows, joys and celebrations. But through it all, Ryder and Zelda would face everything together, their bond growing stronger with each passing year. When Ryder finally passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 73, having lived a full and satisfying life, Zelda grieved deeply, but without regret. They had had over 40 years together, years filled with love and laughter and purpose. He had kept every promise he made to her, had loved her faithfully and truly until his last breath. She could not ask for more than that. Zelda lived another 8 years after Ryder's passing, surrounded by her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She never remarried, feeling that her heart had been given fully to one man, and that was enough. She spent her remaining years working in her garden, helping with the great-grandchildren, and writing down the story of her life so that future generations would know where they came from. She wrote about Thomas and the betrayal that had nearly broken her. She wrote about meeting Ryder in the church, about his kindness and patience. She wrote about their courtship and marriage, about building the ranch together, about raising their children. She wrote about the love that had sustained them through everything, the partnership that had made them stronger than either could have been alone. When Zelda passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 80, surrounded by family in the house she and Ryder had built together, her children found the journal she had kept. Reading it, they understood more fully the remarkable journey their parents had taken, the obstacles they had overcome, the love they had shared. At her funeral, James, now a graying man himself with grandchildren of his own, read from his mother's journal. He read the words she had written about that first meeting with his father, about her fears and hopes, about the gradual healing of her broken heart. And he read the last entry, written just days before her death. "I have lived a good life," she had written in her careful hand. "I have been blessed beyond measure with love and family and purpose. If I could go back and change anything, I would not. Every hardship, every challenge, every moment of fear or doubt led me to where I needed to be. Thomas leaving me at the altar, as painful as it was the best thing that could have happened because it brought Ryder into my life. My husband left me at the altar, I wept, and the cowboy said his loss was my blessing. Those words changed everything. Ryder was my blessing, my gift, my forever love. And now, as I prepare to leave this world and hopefully rejoin him in whatever comes next, I am grateful. Grateful for the life we built, the family we created, the love we shared. If I had to do it all over again, I would not change a single thing. The journal became a treasured family heirloom, passed down through generations. The story of Zelda and Ryder became family legend, told and retold to children and grandchildren, who never tired of hearing about the bride left at the altar, and the cowboy who saw past her pain to the remarkable woman beneath. The ranch remained in the Lawson family for generations, growing and changing with the times but always maintaining the values Ryder and Zelda had established. Hard work, honesty, family, and love above all else. These were the principles they had lived by and passed on to their children, who passed them to their children in turn. In the family cemetery on a hill overlooking the ranch, two headstones stand side by side. Ryder Lawson, it reads on one, beloved husband, father, and grandfather. His loss was her blessing. And beside it, Zelda Warren Lawson, beloved wife, mother, and grandmother. She turned heartbreak into hope. Between them, carved into the stone, are the words that define their life together, forever united in love. And so the story that began with tears in a church in Fort Sumner ended with love spanning generations in Colorado. The woman who thought her life was over that terrible day discovered instead that it was just beginning. The cowboy who offered comfort to a stranger found the love of his life. Together, they proved that sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes, that broken hearts can heal, and that true love, when finally found, is worth every risk and every fear. Their legacy lived on not just in the successful ranch they built or the descendants who carried their name, but in the proof they provided that courage and trust can lead to happiness, that love can overcome betrayal, and that beginnings often come disguised as endings. Zelda had left the church on the arm of a stranger and walked into a future more beautiful than anything she could have imagined. It was a story of heartbreak transformed into joy, of pain giving way to love, of a woman brave enough to risk her wounded heart one more time and a man patient enough to wait while it healed. It was, in every sense, a love story for the ages.